Hello, it's Greg Girls and Guys. We're back. We hope you're having a happy day wherever you're listening to this audio content from. As always, we'd like to thank you for your continued support of Greg Girls and Guys in social media and writing efforts. Thank you. This is episode 049 of the Greg Girls and Guys, definitely not a podcast show. A light and fluffy look at social media, Japan, Japanese food, expat life, and life in general. As always, your retweets of this and all the wonderful content that we actively tweet and retweet out on Craig Hoffman 11 on Twitter is appreciated. Thank you in advance for helping us get the good word out about Greg, Grizzled, and Gaijin. Welcome back. Another good show today, I hope. Talking about a tweet put out in a classic blog post from Mad for Maple. That's Kevin O'Shea of the Just Japan podcast, as well as more recently the Making Better Teachers podcast fame. He put up a tweet about whether or not a foreigner could live on an English teaching salary here in Japan. It's a good question. It's been discussed ad nauseum on any number of forums, Twitter, and social media. Generally, those discussions dissolve into something rather negative and, in my personal opinion, not very productive. I have a minute here as Golden Week continues now into its final weekend, sadly. Or, gratefully, as many people here in Japan are relatively eager to get back to work. I'm kind of ambivalent in the middle. I could work, I could not work. I've enjoyed the time off, to be sure. But that's another podcast. Can you live on an English teaching salary? Yes. But there are factors that come into play. And it's not salary as much as one might think. It's definitely in Japan expenses. Housing costs and prices, even renting, varies greatly across Japan. And that eats up a significant portion of a foreigner's salary, as well as a Japanese person's salary. If one can live in a big area where, of course, there are more opportunities to teach English and make extra money, and can find reasonable accommodations, certainly they can live well. And in the opposite end of the spectrum, if one can find reasonable accommodations in a smaller or even countryside area, one can save and live reasonably well. But what happens to the people that I see who grumble and gripe about the state of English teaching in Japan is, one, they don't have a full-time gig. Many of the jobs that I see on big job sites like Gaijin Pop don't pay year-round. It's not uncommon for a full salary not to be paid in August and December, and even more recently, spring vacations like this long Golden Week. What starts to look like a great salary in the beginning, and especially when you sign on the dotted line for your contract, in the fine details is not as much money as people often think. And that's not good, right? The other thing is, generally the younger people don't have the money management skills. I see a lot of people go out every day, living large, doing their own thing, and it all works until something unforeseen comes up, and then they're screwed. And that also happens to older foreigners who live here. They live check to check to check to check to check, maybe even for several years, until suddenly bad health, something breaks, something needs repaired, a family member goes down, and their financial situation quickly changes. And what was a salary adequate enough to get them to the next month isn't. And let's be honest, companies have been known to suddenly shutter here. And that leaves people hung out to dry, especially when they're counting on even a final paycheck that doesn't come for months, years, or ever. And you're more than welcome to put up a fight, go through the court system, and you probably will eventually see some yen, although yen on the dollar, as it were. But that doesn't help you in the present when the bill collectors come for their money. People ask me, Craig, should I come to Japan to teach English? And I say, sure, It is a wonderful experience. Most of the English teaching jobs here in Japan require and or expect very little of the foreigner. And for many younger foreigners fresh out of college, that's a good thing. And if you come over on a program like the JET program, the salary is generally, with exceptions, adequate enough to let you live, work, and save money while enjoying much, if not all, that Japan has to offer. But there are limits to a lot of the English teaching jobs that are on the upper end of the spectrum. And I know a lot of those people who have left the program, who enjoy Japan, who really want to live and continue to work in Japan. Perhaps some of them deep down inside have visions and hopes and dreams of never leaving, take quite the pay cut. And you'd say, well, maybe you were smart and you saved some money. And I've seen people do that. But they add things to their lives like a non-working spouse and later kids, and all of that is great, but that too takes a bite out of the once adequate salary. And people suddenly start to see Japan not as rosy colored as it was in the beginning. And some people move out of English teaching, God bless them, and they move into Japanese companies where there's very little up, only sideways. And the salary and bonuses remain relatively flat, and the work increases, and the expectations increase, while the money doesn't. Yet their daily expenses, food, housing, entertainment, and educational fees go up and up and up, and what once was a comfortable cushion to live on has become razor thin. And again, that doesn't matter so long as there's nothing major that happens. I can tell you in my case, I'm okay. I've worked really hard. I'm very careful with money. I'm one of the cheapest, stingiest people you will ever meet in your life. And it serves me well, both in America and now as I live in Japan, because things happen. I've talked and written in previous content. My health wasn't the best earlier this year. I was in and out of the hospital. And while that didn't bankrupt me, that's an extra expense. And I did miss time from my company. And things break. Last year, my sink broke. That was about Sanmon, $300. This year, my water heater suddenly stopped working. That was Ju Gomon. That's about $1,500 US. This Golden Week, even though I was just sitting at home, the battery to my wife's car completely pittered out. And that was 20,000 yen. That's like $200 US to get that replaced. So things happen quick, fast, and in a hurry, and unfortunately they happen in big bunches. And I'm not telling you that you got to run around like Chicken Little wondering when and if the sky will fall, because sometimes it just doesn't. But for 99% of the people who come here to teach English, they go home. And I've written and talked about that too. Many of them go home with little to nothing, and they can't or won't go back to mom and dad. And there's a transition period. You don't just walk back into America and have a life set up. And I've known a lot of foreigners who were shell-shocked beyond the culture shock to realize how expensive it was to repatriate to their home countries or even to another country's system. It's not free. And even for the longer term people like me who change jobs or change situations in their life, whether they get married and they have to move, or whether they have family coming in, or whether their wives or husbands' family take ill and their situation suddenly changes where they're much more responsible for that thing. They take a financial hit that's almost impossible to be 100% prepared for. So again, in the opening, can someone live on an English teaching salary? Yes. But I think you have to be cognizant of the fact that you have to work as hard as you can in the present while keeping an eye on the future and realizing that it's coming for you, whether that's here in Japan, in your home country, and whether that outcome is wholly positive or negative is often out of your control. So if you have dreams of coming here and breaking the bank as an English teacher, gambare, you can do it. If you have dreams of simply enjoying Japan and going back home, you can do it. And if you have no plan at all, it behooves you, whether you're in Japan thinking about coming to Japan, or you're an older foreigner here contemplating the future, to really sit down and take a moment to realistically assess and evaluate your financial situation and make the choices that give you the best opportunity for future success and happiness, no matter where you finally decide to put down your roots. That's it, and have a great, great day.